All right, it looks like the waiting room is cleared. I'll keep admitting people as they trickle in.
Great, thanks, Amanda. Hey, everyone, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Mo Carlin, the Director of Quality and Regulatory Affairs here at the Maine Healthcare Association. And today, in addition to our presenter, I'm also joined by my colleagues from DHHS and from Maine Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, who have joined forces to support nursing facilities through quality improvement initiative known as QuEST, which stands for Quality, Excellence, Staffing, and Teamwork. As part of the new nursing facility reimbursement system, nursing homes have the opportunity to earn a share of just over an $8 million quality bonus pool through a new value-based payment program made possible through the Nursing Facility Transition Fund. So in this year, in 2025, your payment is going to be based on participation in quality improvement initiatives rather than performance on selected quality measures. So today's call does count towards your QuEST facilities participation requirements. Now, if you need more information or you have questions about QuEST, please reach out to them. You can email odes.nfquality@maine.gov. And I'm sure we can have Amanda put that in the chat box in case anyone needs it. It is great to see so many faces on our call today, and I want to make sure that everyone gets credit for your attendance. So please make sure you turn on your computers, turn on your cameras, and to add your name and the facility that you are representing in the chat. This is really important, especially if you are a designated quality champion for your organization. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording as well as the slides will be posted to the Rate System Reform website and also be distributed to the QuEST members via email and on the SharePoint site. And if you have any questions on that, you can again reach out to that ODES. If you're not already getting QuEST updates, please again email odes.nfquality@maine.gov. You can also send them a message if you want a link to a copy of today's chat or attendance log so that you have that for your records. So our goal is to share information, but also to hear from you. You are the local experts on some of the best practices that you're implementing. First today, we're going to hear from a national expert, and then at the end, we'll leave some time for discussion. So today is the Dementia Care Partnership Call. I wanted to remind people that there's also a Dementia Toolbox Work Committee, which has met once so far and will be meeting on a monthly basis to work on the Dementia Toolbox, which was originally developed by the partnership several years ago. The plan of this group is to review and to update the toolbox. So it'll be available for all of you to utilize as you work to improve care for your residents with dementia. Currently, we are reviewing element 1 of the toolbox, which is titled the first line of defense. Well, we do have these toolbox workforce calls, or not workforce, excuse me, work group calls. Those do not count towards your value-based payment QuEST participation. However, we are really in need of many of you participating and assisting with this as possible. So the next meeting for that group is going to be July 17th, and I think Amanda's going to put a link in the chat box. If you want to attend, there'll be a link to the Zoom. You can also email me at Maine Healthcare, and I'll put my email in the chat as well in just a minute. So in staying with the theme of the first element today, the first line of defense, we'll be focusing on inspiring change. And we are fortunate enough to have with us a fabulous speaker who many of you already know, Margie McLaughlin. So for those who don't know Margie is a skilled nursing facility, quality improvement expert. She is a passionate national healthcare leader, an educator focused on improving the quality of care that impacts the lives of patients in nursing homes and residents, and both in nursing homes and hospitals. She's a recent honoree of the prestigious Providence Business News Leader and Achievers Award. She has served in the nation's capital as Senior Director of Quality Improvement at the American Healthcare Association, and is currently the Director of Education and Transformation at Health Centric Advisors, where she leads a team of healthcare experts who apply their skills across 12 states, providing coaching and hand-on assistance to healthcare organizations in their efforts to improve quality and develop a strong, nimble, and skilled workforce. As you know, Margie is an enthusiastic educator and a consultant who pursues her passion for improving the lives of residents by teaching problem solving and developing educational resources, tools, and products for our staff. Margie works both locally and nationally to accelerate change in healthcare, Her experiences have provided her with unique insights and her boots on the ground experience in helping organizations to improve their care and services to residents. Margie earned a master's degree in holistic counseling at Salve Regina in Newport, Rhode Island, and applies this knowledge to individualized care and organizational culture. Welcome, Margie. Thank you.
Woo. Wow. Thank you,
I-
everybody. So glad. In the world of change management, I'm going to change the opening. I just want to start out first by just saying thanks to Amanda and Maureen, who have showed such great leadership and foresight in putting together this series, and lots of the great work that they're doing behind the scenes to make life better for residents all across Maine. So thanks to them. And but part of it, we just before we get started, before we jump in, let's see who's with us today. And Amanda is driving, and so she's going to open up a poll right now, and she's going to check in with you to see how many years of experience do you have in your current role or position in your organization. And so let's just go there. I think you can probably see it on your screen. All you have to do is just kind of go in there and click, and then we'll have that thrilling moment where it all kind of shows up. So if you haven't already, there's 2 questions there. Take a look, and just let's see who's with us and what's happening. I know a lot of people are, shall we say, experienced like me, having passed maybe the 50 mark. How's that going, Amanda? Is it working pretty well?
Yeah, we've got 85 participants who have answered so far. Couple more
Great.
trickling in. I'm going to close it
Yeah.
in about 10 more seconds.
Okay, perfect. And in the meantime, I'll just share a little bit of information while we go along here. I think, let's see. Oh, look at that. I don't know if you folks can see that. So how long have you been in your current role or position at your current organization? And I'm seeing a lot of people more than 10 years. That's looking good. Lots of people less than 6 months. Any surprises there for all of you? Does that look about right? Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that second question, if we can.
Can you see that one, Margie, if you scroll down?
Oh, yeah, I got another. How many
yeah.
years of experience do you have in your current role in your total career? But I can't see the rest.
I'll read them. So
Okay.
0 to 1 year, 13%. 1 to 3 years, 10%. 3 to 5 is 10%. 5 to 10 is 11%. 10 to 20 is 22%. And we have 34% of folks on the call who have been in their career for greater than 20 years in their current role or position.
My gosh, that is so great to hear. And I think it's been said, but I just want to reiterate that I recognize that I'm here giving you, starting a discussion about change management and how to think about organizational change. And I recognize that so many of you could be in my seat actually teaching this. So unlike a lot of sessions that you probably attend, I'm actually going to ask you to jump in, because I think it's really important for everybody to kind of share the love, share your stories. And I do ask you to kind of jump in. Raise your hand if you're going to jump in, and that way we can be sure to keep track of you. I love talking with people who live in this turbulent and disruptive environment known as skilled nursing. You're the people who wrote the book on change. I kind of come at this in a kind of different way. There's lots of people who have written great books. You know, there's the Lewin's 3 Stages of Change, and Cotter's 8 Steps of Change, and McKinley's 7 Steps for Change. And I kind of laugh because if you're hoping to hear about the 5 steps, I don't got 5. Get the book from Amazon, because I think that's what you're looking for. In long-term care, what I find is that, there's a multitude of steps of change, and it depends on your organization and your culture. And so what some people can do in 3 weeks, some people take 3 years, and it's all depend, it's snowflakes. And so I start off there because I think it's really important that there's no prescribed way of making this work perfectly. And what I also find is that there's a really fine balance in managing change. Sometimes, letting out the clutch, letting your front runners run like crazy, and other times recognizing that that's a great idea and we're moving toward it, but we're moving too fast because we're not, ticking the ties and tying the bows. So sometimes it takes just a little bit more. It kind of begs the question, why don't we just check in, and why don't you share your own experience? We have a little poll coming up here. What's some of the experience you have in leading change? And Amanda's gonna pop up a little poll. Have you not been swept up by change, like in the midst of the pandemic, where you just kind of rode the wave in some respects, but actually had to lead and manage the change? What do you think? How many times in the past 5 years have you led or been part of a team that led organizational change, no matter where you were? So what, and hold that thought when you put that number in there, because I'd love to ask you and be able to talk to you about that in a minute.
Have about 3/4 of folks who have responded.
Okay, great.
Again, I'll leave it up for about another 30 seconds. Still rolling in.
Perfect.
All right, we're ending that poll and
Okay.
sharing the results. Can folks see the results on your screen?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm looking at 3%, not yet, 12% one time, 32 2 or 3 times, and a whole more than half of you have already run through this a million times. I hope it was a good experience for you when you did go through it. And chances are you weren't sitting there with the timeline and the checklist and trying to manage that. And so our conversation today is going to center a little bit around why change. This is kind of the reaction that a lot of staff have, isn't it? Here's change. We're gonna, what change? Why change? Why do we need to change? I hate change. Oh God, not another change. And the very famous and the secretly hidden urging of many staff members, just wait them out. Management will tire of the whole idea soon enough, and this will go away. So just go along with them. And I think sometimes that's kind of where people are kind of thinking in terms of the types of change that we as leaders often kind of bring forward. Today, though, I'm going to talk in the context of what we've been talking about for like the last couple of months, which is change as it relates to your culture and how to manage that change, because that one's bigger. And I think before I do, I'll just share with you just a quick bit of history, just so that like we're having kind of contextual kind of landing on the whole story. So, a lot of our old nursing home was born out of kind of the hospital model. And during that time, there was an awful lot that was going on, in order to look professional and everything, nurses in white caps, shifts that had very specific thing, bed corners that were done a certain way. And I think what ended up happening was the measure of success there was based on how well the routines and schedules were adhered to. And it was perfect for its time. And it did focus on disease and malady and hardship, if you will. And people lived there to be taken care of and to receive great clinical care was the hope. And what started kind of beginning to percolate for folks was kind of like, is this the right kind of care for this time? Are we is there something wrong with the model that we currently have? It was kind of sprinkled too at that time with a little dash of ageism, which I think still persists to a certain degree. And many of you might be, maybe recognize that, One thing that was also a unique part of the story as it kind of progressed, as we look at like kind of the backdrop for nursing homes, was the Greatest Generation, a gang of folks who had been through a huge amount of upheaval in their life. Most of them, it was punctuated by wars, and their early days were kind of a lot without food, a lot without special needs, but coming together as a community to serve the war or serve whatever big cause there was at the time. Those folks were also a very gentlemanly and ladylike group of individuals. If I can stereotype, they were an amazing group at that time. As time went on, though, people started realizing, was this the right thing for that crowd? And there were three big things that began to happen, and people started asking the question, what would you be thinking if this was the rest of your life? If this little 10 by 8 little section of where you lived, what if that was the rest of your life? And what if a bath looked like this? I think there's people on the call based on the experience who used this tub probably at some point in their life. Everybody's shaking their head. Yeah, I remember. And I think what people started asking was like, what if this was the rest of your life? What if I tried to use the correction on these pictures. These are from actual pictures I took in different places, and I can't scrape the gloom off of them. so that was one part of the story. And then the second big question that people started asking related to a thing called iatrogenesis. And in the challenges, as we saw more and more folks coming who had Alzheimer's disease, as people were healthier, living longer, they were living with different chronic diseases. And as they began to come to us in our skilled nursing facilities, back then just nursing homes, people started asking the question that was, is there something about the way we're delivering care that's actually causing some of the problems that we have? And in some respects, it's almost as if like, are our residents robbed of their ability to actually thrive and live their best possible life because of us? And are our systems and the things that we're doing, our routines and processes, are they designed to serve our residents, or are they designed to serve us? And so this word iatrogenesis started to enter our vocabulary because it was talking about harm that was unintentionally caused by the healers. So when you hear that, can you think of an example of iatrogenesis? Can you think of something either in the chat or just jump in, come off mute? What's a great example that you can think of, either days of old, or what's a good example of iatrogenesis? One that S.
Yeah, so one that comes to mind, I've worked in SNFs a majority of my healthcare career. I was a CNA for 10 years before I've been, was a nurse, and I'm newly a DON at a SNF or Pinnacle in Sanford. But the facility is a lot different than the SNF that I came from. It's a lot more geriatric and kind of old school. And the place that I was at was very proactive on therapies and getting the patients to do what they can do, I guess, versus what can we do for the patients. So it was just a different attitude of let the patients be able to give them the time to be able to do the task on their own versus us just doing it for them because it's faster. So that's just one.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. And I'm looking in the chat and people have some great things, loss of function in the name of safety, right? Oh yeah, you can't let people walk, God knows. But the less they walk, the more they become impaired, right? And I'm looking at lots of people have, the whole time restriction, little time to spend time talking with folks and lack of social connection. And famously, iatrogenesis, there was a study that was done, Sue-Ann, her name just left my brain, but they did some brilliant work on sleep and recognized that the majority of residents in nursing homes live their life sleep deprived. Right? So if you have dementia, what's the likelihood that you're going to have a good day tomorrow if you've never even hit your REM cycle? Let alone get knocked out of it 2 or 3 times. You'd be grouchy and cranky. And so that is a great example. All that I'm seeing here in the chat, loss of function in the name of safety, letting residents sleep, providing ADLs instead of letting people, how many homes went down the road where people didn't eat fast enough and so started helping people to be able to eat, and before they know it, they had 51 people who needed support in being able to have lunch. And before you know it, they were, oh my gosh. So those kinds of things really are. So that was number 2. So the first one was, what if this were the rest of my life? Is this what we want? Number 2 is this notion of iatrogenesis, which is like, are we causing it? And then the third one, and the third game changer comes in also just a single word. And our vision for the culture change and the change that we're talking about comes out of this word practicable. And practicable, it comes from, believe it or not, the survey language, as you know, and it's helping people to maintain or to reach the highest practicable physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being. And so here's the big kicker. This third word in this process was so important. When people started living into it, that's when the challenge of change and moving your organization in a new direction became really substantial. And practical is kind of what works in a given situation, It's practical to sit in the car with your teenage kid while you're kind of going along. It's just a good idea. Kind of serves the purpose. But practicable is the level to which a resident desires and is capable of achieving something, their goals. When we hear people say, I really want to get back walking again, they're letting us know that's their goal. So having them say, oh, Ethel, you got to sit down, Ethel. Oh, we're going to put her over by the nurse's station because, we need to keep an eye on her, which is, of course, true. But practicable is what her desire is, and is it attainable? And that becomes kind of the 3 big pushes that kind of went on that led to some of the change that we see and look for in nursing homes. And so we began to ask the question, so how do you get there, and where is there anywhere anyway? And so what we started to see was a whole lot of organizations and places that began to kind of build new cool things that the rest of us envied. And there was a lot of environmental and a lot of fluff and buff. But when all was said and done, the change that we're looking for, the change we seek, is the actual movement from this very institutional style of care to individualized care. And maybe you've heard this 100 times, and maybe if I had made this a straight line, maybe you could even tell me where you are on the cycle. But when I think about it, how about for you? Like, what are things that you think of that define or describe perfectly institutional care? What's an example of institutional care? Feel free to come off of mute, but pop it in the chat. What do you think when you think institutional care? I have 100 little things that pop to mind. I don't know about you.
Stuff in the chat. Everything's very scheduled, not offering choices, white walls and white floors.
Beautiful.
The
Yeah.
patient has to fit the mold of the facility they're in.
Yeah.
Sort
Yeah.
of like jail.
Yeah, and I think that became part, that picture that I showed in the beginning was kind of that's the very thing we're trying to avoid, isn't it? It's like giving people that they're still American and free, get to choose in the context of also being cared for, and recognizing that some illness or something has probably come their way and unfortunately created a kind of new normal for them. I love what you're writing. How about contractures and pressure ulcers caused by posy belts? Oh my gosh, somebody who's been around for a while. Thanks, Amanda. Industry's use of antipsychotic meds. Perfect example, and we can talk about that a little bit more. Looking at some of the different, very scheduled. Go ahead.
Staff needed timelines versus resident desired timelines. So everybody eats at the same time. Everybody has their medications at the same time. Very regimented.
Yeah. And so the same applies as you go down this continuum, if you will, moving. If culture change, the culture change journey is moving from institutional to individualized care. I guess it begs the question, what are some examples, or what are some of the things you've seen that really show individualized care? What does individualized care look like? And maybe it's in your place already. Maybe you have a lot of it going on. I went to a place recently where a member of a resident actually was on the board of the nursing home, which was a lovely thing. I love when I see staff being hired by a resident committee of people. Yeah, I see a lot of the same, getting to know the residents really well. Seeing a lot of resident preference. I was in a home last week where they have 90% of population of people with SUD. And one of the things that became one of their proud moments, they found that so many young people had a whole different idea of what a snack looked like. And it didn't have anything to do with a graham cracker or a Lonadune. And so it turns out 27-year-old guys really want Doritos, hot Doritos. And that wasn't really big on the 80-year-old's dance card. So how do you achieve this with all the regulations that are out there? I'm going to talk about that. So thanks, Miss Bredden. Appreciate that. Knowing how people like their coffee without having asked, because you know it. Love it. And so, not to belabor the point, I can tell that it's something that we think about institutional care, very task-oriented, schedule-driven, depersonalized. It's kind of like a one-size-fits-all. Back in the old days, everybody got their shower in a certain day. Everybody got up at a certain time, those kinds of things. We've moved away from that. But still has some level of function that still lingers because it's a little bit easier, and we're also caring for a lot of folks. The individualized care is the care, the delivery systems, the daily routines, all begin to kind of look and surround themselves around the interests and preferences of the resident. And so I love this, like getting from here, institutional care, to there, individualized care, takes this change process. Strategy is a big component of it, but you can kind of see how my design is a little different than, you know, some of the than Cotter's 8 steps. It's kind of like, here's where we are, here's where we'd like to be, here's some ideas about how to get there, and then here are some steps along the way. So it's meant to be comical. One of the things we did along the way, though, was I was part of a big national effort in culture change, and we tried to put together some ideas about how you could actually think about culture change. And so for us, what we began is really looking at, when you put the resident at the center, the systems have to hug them, have to wrap around them, if you will. And we did some remarkable things. I worked at Great Home, St. Elizabeth Home, where we actually changed the times that shifts began and ended, and on purpose. We customized them. We did some of these things. And what in our pilot that we did years ago, we began to kind of break things down. So in a culture change world, what are some of the workplace practices? What are the things that we're teaching? What are the competencies that we want staff to do to create the kind of culture? We're calling it culture change. So what's the culture we're trying to change? And I'll show you a little bit more about that. But the way we designed, the way we think about culture change, was that big heart is the resident in the center. And then you're looking at workplace practices and care practices. We look at the environment, what that looks like, whether it's, you know, 100-year-old building, which I come from a 109-year-old building. So we had certain challenges, to, you know, those that are really sleek and have become the new kind of hotel model. And then leadership and family and community and the regulatory process. And because you asked, here in Rhode Island, we actually worked with our health department, and we actually had them part of our culture change work. We used to have brown bag lunches, and providers could put together questions about culture change artifacts that they'd like to be able to do. And we'd give them to the health department. We'd invite everybody in, people would bring lunch, and we'd supply stuff. And we'd have a really great conversation about everything from food and dining and bathrooms and letting people sleep and wake at will. So including the health department became part of our process. It got so good that we were, as the QIO, I actually got to go out with the health department on survey. And so they would regulate and I would educate. And so we literally teamed up together to create a dynamic duo, because they can't educate on the scene, but we can. And so when people said, we can't have a pantry with food just out and people can take it, and the survey team was right there, and they'd say, oh, yes, you can. Here are some of the things you might want to think about. And we kind of take it away. So believe it or not, we intentionally involved the regulatory folks in our process so that they were able to be part of that. We can talk about that later, but I just want to show you. Yeah,
Margie,
come on.
can I just, one of the things as part of this QuEST has been, we have had conversations with, licensing and certification. So if there's specific questions that as we're moving through this, certainly we can reach out to them, because you know, we really do want to kind of improve wherever we can. So just to let people know that.
Yeah, and we left a breadcrumb trail, just so you know. We put together the health department and the QIO, Health Centric Advisors. We actually created a toolkit and tried to hawk it to other states so that people would start doing some of this stuff. So I press on. That's why I got my hair color changed over the years. Anyway. Here's some of the things, though, that people began to easy, low-hanging fruit as people began to make their journeys. So I think you can see here's a old-fashioned bathroom, if you will. Not that old-fashioned, not as old as the other one. These are actual pictures from places that I visited. And of course, it had become kind of the storage room. There was lots of clinical stuff. It didn't have kind of the kind of homey feel of a relaxing spa-like event that you would experience. It was really one of those kind of like, you know, dip and run kind of things. But what ended up happening was these folks, as they were kind of moving on their culture change journey, trying to create a culture that was more home-like for folks. And we kind of even get people thinking about, when you use the word home-like, that's not a dedication to making it home. Home-like is just kind of moving down the road. It's a culture change. And so one of the things that they did, this particular place, you can contrast this old bathroom with its clinical stuff to, this is what the staff did. So I'll just do that one more time. This is that bathroom. And then they started really looking to make it into something where if you say had dementia, it wouldn't be horrible to experience, you know, no old cold tile and that kind of thing. Some of the things people did was to look at different areas and see how they could make them more like home, make them feel less medical, less like a hospital and more like somebody's home. This picture comes with a great story, because this organization, as they kind of moved down the road, began to realize that it wasn't the culture that they were talking about was making residents, putting residents first, letting them, their voice be heard, letting them make the changes. But they realized that as they were moving down the road, things were becoming more and more better for staff as well. And staff began to have a voice in how to make the home a better place. This had been an absolute dump of a place. And staff actually asked, could we get a better place to take a break? And so there's some recliners in here, there's a TV. And so people could truly take a little time off. One of the huge things that we saw along the way was the whole beginning of the change from food trucks that ran upstairs that kind of came, temperatures were questionable, and moving into a different style of dining. And so what you'll see here is kind of like going from food truck, moving to kind of like steam tables, making things so that there was far more resident choice, and then move into places like this where somebody just cooks and makes things to order. And I think you can see the difference as you see kind of like somebody just being able to relax with the morning paper. And, you know, in terms of activity, you know, back in the day, it was kind of like, oh, you know, we did current events. Well, this guy still reads. And so for him to be able to sit at the table and just be able to do that, we began to see things like this where staff members doing the Wake at Will program were able to just cook on the unit and just whip up a really nice breakfast for folks. And, you know, for the person who stayed in bed until 10 or 10:30. I'll also just say that this is one of the homes that I just recently visited, and I think you can appreciate that this is a tried and true down the wool old nursing home. And what you see is how much they changed even the way the activities looked, you know, making some of that look really great along the way. So these are some ideas and some things that people have done along the way and the reasons why we began to think about making that change. But the bigger thing, the change that you seek isn't fancy bathrooms, but that is nice. And, restaurant style dining, people in bow ties and button down shirts, really nice. Great. Go for it. Cool outdoor patios with the automatic doors, really, really nice. But what we're really looking for is this whole thriving residents, people whose daily living and whose life and their voice is being heard, where they get to make choices that they're living their best life and helping to build the home itself, that they have that kind of feeling and mission and purpose. Sometimes right about here, people want to go, she's all wet, because that's not our residents. Our residents are so much sicker than that. Our residents can't function on that level. And I'm here to tell you that some of our residents sadly have lived in a fishbowl that's just so small that they can't, there's no place to grow. They don't get to grow to the full depth of the life that they could have. So if bingo is on the agenda every week, several times a week, that's really gonna not help to grow. No offense on bingo, it's just an example. Sometimes our residents are actually limited the iatrogenesis of their ability to be able to really live the full life that we hope for. If staff can't imagine it, and if they can't fully articulate it, then sometimes what we end up with is kind of looking at the change you seek, this one that we look at and say, it can't happen here. Don't underestimate it. And then along the way, what you'll also find is the change that you seek is really thriving staff, and staff who function as family together and who care about each other enough to make things really come to life in that place, and that they're living their best possible life, and they're learning, they're having the opportunity to move forward. And so that's the culture that we're looking for. That's the change we're looking for. And so lots of times when people think about managing change, and when they think about the culture change movement, they think about some really cool place with a lot of glass that has, everything you can't, because you don't have enough money to buy a new place. And I'm here to tell you, it's not just the environment. It's not about the environment. It's about creating a culture where people can thrive. And so how do you make that happen? And how do you move down that road to get to that place? And so here's where, if you're looking for the steps, this is where they come in. And let me just tell you a little story. So years ago, there was a lady named Susan Eaton, Dr. Susan Eaton. She was a professor at MIT who loved and studied, because it was so complicated, nursing homes. She was a fabulous human being. And one day we were meeting, she had to break the meeting because she had come down with a terrible cold. And I'm sad to say that 4 weeks later, she had died of a form of leukemia. Her work, though, her family gave us all of her work. And so we put together, for the benefit of the nursing home community, her best ideas. And one of them happens to be this. She wrote an incredible study. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. She wrote this incredible study that was called What a Difference Management Makes. And the crux behind creating a great culture, she found the key to it. And what she had done was she went around to nursing homes that were close by each other in similar zip codes all over New England and New York and New Jersey. And what she was doing was comparing high 5-star homes against low-star homes that were close by each other. And what she began to find was that there were similarities and things that were going on within the homes that made them magnets for staff to come and be part or to stay. And what she did was, in her research, she began this what a difference management makes, was she found that it was the homes that had incredible management, not just the administrator, but leaders who were all throughout the organization. And that's what made the huge difference. And so in her study, she found these 5 things to be the high performing. So the secrets in the sauce kind of moment, it's this one. She found that these 5 practices had such a keen and profound effect on the home's culture that not only did it retain staff, but it also helped with daily attendance and the performance and the actual relationship with residents. These were the folks who were able to do innovative, unique things and who kind of got out of their own way, and their process and practices allowed them to move way down into that individualized care. So moving from institutional to individualized care, this is how they did it. So the first one, they had leaders who were all throughout the organization. They trained people, they strengthened people's skills. Bad managers became good managers because somebody mentored them and worked with them and fired them in some cases. And then valuing staff in the day-to-day practices and policies in word and deed. And what that meant was that sometimes, well, I'll tell you more. Policies, the third one, making sure that the HR policies were very, very high performing. There was a high commitment to keeping them in place. They came up with innovative ideas. I'll tell you a few. And there were systems, the fourth one, there were systems that were aligned with the organizational goals and sufficiency, enough staff, equipment, resources in order to care humanly for all those folks. Those were the 5-star homes. Those were the homes that did the best on the culture change journey. These were the evidence and the practices that you could take to the bank if you wanted to move down the road. So that's my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the best I can do. It's Susan Eaton. I don't take credit for it. I just happen to be a big fan. So how is that happening in your place? Like when you think about it, are there things that you're doing, very tangible, specific things that you're doing to kind of help build that leadership all across from the laundry all the way to the board? What are some of the things that you're doing that can really make a huge difference for folks? What do you got? I got my list. Hey, Susan Wary, thank you. Didn't know you
a
were
lot
here.
of you on this call, and I know a lot of you are doing really great things, and you don't have to be humble. And you don't have to be perfect in order to speak up and share something that you're doing that's great.
Yeah, yeah. I got a few. I won't belabor it, but call out the talents and skills of staff members. We had a special place called TLC, the Total Living. Some of you have heard me talk about it. It's how we cared for and created a daycare center for our folks who had Alzheimer's disease in our nursing home. And so we had talented staff, and so we'd bring them in to sing, people who sang in church choirs. People felt really involved and fell in love with offering their talents. People brought babies and kids, and we did show and tell, and people would bring the most incredible things. There you go. Hi there, Brenda. Good to see you too. Staff Appreciation Week. Yeah. Although we're hearing more and more, let's stay away from the pizza. it's kind of losing its potential as being a way that we can thank people. We're looking at call out staff talents and skills, let them lead committees and resident meetings, like switch out, let other people drive for the time being. Teach staff new skills that help them to become good leaders, and crazy things like things you don't think of, like meeting etiquette and note taking and goals and minutes and agendas, because come to find out, that's kind of like the infrastructure of kind of keeping things going. How about steady check-ins? And how about letting somebody else do some rounding and go around and talk with folks? Rounding should be a given, but how about letting some other folks teach data reading? Oh my gosh, I can't say enough about this, how important it is. If people are given the opportunity to learn what it is, that's the starting point of quality improvement. Being able to look at something and say, holy mackerel, a 43% antipsychotic rate. What? Like, let staff be astounded by that. And it's like, what do we have to do to get better? So helping people to be able to do those things. I see a lot of food. I see a lot of food. So that's awesome. Consistent staffing on our memory unit, affording same entertainment options as we do for their units. I hear you. Let's scoot along here and let's take a look at this next one. And I'm curious to think, when you think about valuing staff in the day-to-day policies and practices, what are some of those things? Rewards for perfect attendance. Yeah. How do you value staff beyond food? Pay attention to what they talk about, engage what they need. Great, Brittany. Thank you. Yeah, personal thank you cards. I love it. Yeah. Send it to their house. That gets them too. Helping them on the unit, show them you're in the thick of it with them. That's a fact, isn't it? Ask them how it's going, praise them. Yeah, one of the nurses that I worked with did a really cool thing where she had everybody on a rotating schedule. She would have lunch with them, or make a point of getting to know them better and find out what they were interested in so she could help support their goals, know their names and their kids' names. Beautiful. Teamwork, definitely. You got it. So Susan Eaton's third one is this beautiful policies, high performance, high commitment, HR policies. I'll just share with you a couple of ideas while you put yours in there. Spirit Week, I appreciate it. Sending folks to classes, to conferences. I got to be honest, I was a 5-year employee at the American Healthcare Association. I know I'm biased, but what I have to tell you is there is nothing like going to the American Healthcare Association conference and what you'll learn and what you'll experience. And so the cost of that one or two people going is well worth it, because they'll learn so much. So thinking about how each person, what are some of the things they want to learn? What do they want to get better at? How can you help? One of the homes that I was working with changed their retirement policy. And so you could choose between student loan repay or retirement, which was brilliant, because, if you're 31, you're really not worried so much about your retirement, but boy, you could use that money. If you could get rid of that loan sooner, that would make such a difference. So I don't know about you. Oh, I see, Jessica, you've put in a great one, a mentor program that the mentors get mentored by senior leaders in the building, and financial rewards for successful retention. Brilliant, all that kind of stuff. My old boss had this brilliant thing. You got 50 years, $50 for your first year for employee appreciation, $50 for your first year, and then $25 for every year after that you stayed. So by the time you got up to around 20 years, it was a really nice way of complimenting people for their service, and you'd be surprised at the effect that that had on people. I don't know what that looked like for some of you, but I'm thinking about HR policies. And so another one that we saw that was really important was, it might seem a little harsh, but things to think about. It's if the dietary person, if their kid was sick and they didn't show for a while, and then at about 10:30 they said, "Oh, sorry, I'm late. My kid was sick." But if a CNA did that, they'd get written up with a pink slip, but the dietary person wouldn't even have to call. And I'm not saying right or wrong of that. All I'm saying is that disparity that we call micro inequities, it's those little things that sometimes can cause a lot of disturbance within a home, hard feelings. And so thinking about some of those types of policies, what are the policies that serve you in a really great way? And so let's just take a look at this next one to go. And that's, I think so looking at some of the sufficiency, and I don't kid myself these days. I recognize that many of you are in different places. Some of this might sound a little more difficult, if you will, to consider because of where you're at, but trying to ensure that there's enough resources, there's enough stuff that was happening available, that makes all the difference. And so with that in mind, I'm kind of entrusting Susan Eaton's work now to you, because when all is said and done, when we're thinking about how to manage change, how to create culture, a new culture for yourself, a culture where residents are at the very heart of things, this is the playbook that I encourage you to really be thinking about, and to actually begin that journey. And so I just want to share this last couple of things. When I think about some of the stuff that I get to see in a lot of homes that are managing change really well, I think one of the things that they do particularly on really, really well is that they're able to share a really clear vision of what the change will look like and why. And so they don't get out in the hallway and say, "Get on the damn train. The train is leaving. We're going to individualized care land." It hasn't worked for many, and I would encourage you not to. When we're working on this type of culture, kind of moving it, it becomes an action. It was like that slide that says here, there, strategy, 1 step, 2 step. It's really about helping people to just begin to get a sense that they're part of a loving, caring community that puts residents first always. And you're the ones who are going to keep projecting that in a way that staff start projecting that as well. And so that becomes one of the most important parts of managing the change. One of the things that I would say next is that the words that I share with people that I'm working with and offering technical assistance to is create a solutions culture. And excuse me, a solutions culture is one where people are always thinking, they're always coming up with the new kind of the best thing, the new way to do something. They're looking for solutions both in the moment, and I've shared a little about the Shift Coach program, but what, even if you don't know about that, what happens, the magic happens in the huddle. And when people get together to talk and create solutions together, that becomes huge for so many people. And that one way to do that, I just want to get really practical with you, not practicable, practical, I just want to show you that this is a great way to handle, at the head of the fishbone, put whatever the issue is that you're trying to solve. So up in the top, you see the little, that's the issue that you're trying to work at. And then what you'll see is we use that Hatch model. We use workplace practice, the 6 domains of Hatch as the bones. So, so I'll just give you an example. Oh my gosh, we have a 29% antipsychotic drug rate. What? That's terrible. So what I would do is put contractor's tape on the wall, put a little sticky note at the head, and I would literally put as the problem, why is our antipsychotic drug rate so high? And then the bones would say workforce, environment, care practices, leadership, family and community, and survey, because those are the 6 domains of Hatch. And what I would do is leave the sticky pad. This is also a workshop that we do all the time. And what people begin to do is they begin to find solutions, get to the root cause of things. They begin to talk about how to make this work. We take a picture and get a little personal information on new employees and share them on our Facebook page. That's a nice one. Came up late, took a minute, but that's it. So this little fishbone right here is actually a great way. If you're following creative solutions culture, you have to be out doing it. Create huddles. Go buy some contractor's tape on your way home and put one of your most annoying issues, or what we call an irritant, at the head of the fishbone. I'll also just share with you, and I know it's ad nauseum because I show this slide every presentation I give, but celebrate your gains and also make them known to people. And so if you're trying to create change, let people know the change. What you can see is this was a leadership program that I taught out in Iowa, and everybody had to create a quality improvement board, if you will. And so you can see the improvement project, the goal, the process, the progress, the PIP, who's on the team, what data were they using to track it, and those that were finishing up, what was some of the results. This to me is like if every home could just have one of these. And so celebrate some of that, get people on the team to be part of this, and make sure people know there's a lot of ways to celebrate. I would say always get input from those closest to the action. And so this happens to be an incredible group of folks from Maine who are up in the northern part of Maine. And they came up with this for a social media post. And I think the biggest thing is, though, having them be part of the conversation. The same with the residents. So many times we think, oh, this is person-centered care. We're going to reduce antipsychotic drugs. And it's kind of like that whole clinical process, that's you doing improvement, way great. But the culture change that we're looking for is putting the resident at the head of that. So what is it that the resident needs? What do they feel they need? What helps them? And so sometimes we confuse culture change and quality improvement. They're not mutually exclusive, but sometimes one process is the ends to a means. And so thinking about it in terms of getting input from the people, the people closest to the action. When we did our little TLC where people came down to this program, it started as a little from 9 o'clock to about 2 o'clock in the afternoon kind of thing. And it was the residents who said, can we stay? Can it be longer? Can it be on Sundays? And that's when what was a good idea that the staff had became a brilliant idea that the residents had. Look for that, because that's a fact, Jack. And then honor your pain points, which is kind of like, you know what? Yes, we live in turbulent times. Honor your pain points. maybe the vision that you have is not one that's attainable in the next 6 months, the next year and a half. But begin your journey nonetheless, and honor the pain point. Recognize that, ooh, right, for these 2 weeks, we just can't keep doing this, but we're going to keep going, and tell people that. I'll give you one last thing from our work. One of the things we used to talk about was a thing called the way of inquiry, which was kind of, this is as close as I get to a step for change. And when I think of your pain points, we would call them irritants. And so those are those annoyances based on a belief or a behavior or a practice that becomes a tolerated part of the culture. You know what became a tolerated part of the culture was restraints. There was a time when that seemed like a perfectly acceptable thing. But at a certain point, people started getting part two, kind of like news of a difference. And that was that there was other factors. People were dying. People were getting strangled. There was horrible stories, that things that happened. And then people started to rise up, people like Joanne Rader and great people, national experts who said, this just can't exist anymore. Brenda, you were probably there then. And then we created this kind of like awakening. People started to kind of offer other ideas. How else can we do it? Like, what do we do about people? Like, we walk them. There becomes like a tipping point, and there's this kind of personal sense of understanding and responsibility and needing to change the way things are, the behavior or practice. And there's two ways to go. One way is to go toward hope, find solutions, get those solutions going, and then begin the action. That's the culture change journey. And the other one is despair, which is kind of, I surrender, I can't think of a better way to do it, and it leads to immobilization. And so this is kind of what we're looking for. When people do find themselves in that immobilized place, I think what you'll see is that, often what looks like resistance is really exhaustion. And thank you. Yeah, give me a thumbs up if you can relate. I appreciate you all jumping in there. Yeah. So don't assume that your staff is done. They're done at the moment. And when you're getting a lot of resistance, be sure to be looking at that in the world of organizational change. Be looking at what you're hearing and what you're seeing from folks. I'll tell you that all this kind of wraps into what became this movement. And over the course of time, people have worked really hard to try to define culture change in lots of different ways and give a roadmap or a recipe or whatever. But like I said, it's kind of a snowflake kind of operation. And that's what led to the, to the artifacts of culture change. Those were meant to be simply kind of markers. Some of you long ago were doing some of those things, and others of you found yourself like, ooh, that's never even thought of that one. And so the artifacts were there to nudge us as a community. Here's my prayer. My prayer is that there has to be artifacts 3.0, because 1 already got finished, 2 is already almost done, and we need a 3 because we're moving down the track so far that in fact we need a whole one. And just because I can't stand not doing it, I'll just say this great little poem. One song can spark a moment, and one flower can wake the dream. One tree can start a forest, and one bird can herald spring. One smile begins a friendship, one hand clasp lifts a soul. One star can guide a ship at sea, one word can frame the goal. One vote can change a nation, one sunbeam lights a room. One candle wipes out darkness, and one laugh will conquer gloom. One step must start each journey, one word must start each prayer. One hope will raise your spirits, one touch can show you care. One voice can speak with wisdom and one heart can know what's true. One life can make the difference, you see? It's up to you. So with that in mind, I'll just pass it on to my pals. Open it up for questions, and I'll stop the share too.
Margie, that was absolutely incredibly awesome. Thank you. I know there's a few of you on this call that I know I've personally spoken to, and many that I haven't, that when it comes to one area that I know we're all focusing on is with dementia, is reducing antipsychotics. And, you know, you've heard some great stuff from Margie, and I'd love for people to share a little bit. What have they done along this change, and how you make change and culture change and all of that as part of that journey? Is there anyone who wants to maybe share some stuff with us?
Mo, I think some of it starts with your providers in-house. If they don't have that knowledge base that we're trying to steer from those, sometimes those are their go-to drugs. So, you know, at my last center, I saw that a lot. We had a different team of providers. It wasn't the usual Southern Maine geriatrics or those with that geriatric experience. And it really is their go-to drug. You know, and in personal experience, with a dad with cancer, they tried to put him on olanzapine for nausea. You know, I'm like, wait, why are we jumping to an antipsychotic for this? So I think, you know, having the ability to stand up to these providers and say, hey, I don't think that's what's best for our patients, is a first start.
And so that's where the one poem comes in. One staff member stops the doctor.
I know Maine Veterans Home in Caribou has made like almost a 48%, I think, decrease in the last year. Julie, you have any words of wisdom you want to share with us?
Yeah, sure. We have a lot of different interventions that we have put in place, and they've kind of built off each other, but kind of to the previous dialogue relating to, like, it's a first go-to drug oftentimes, especially in the acute care setting. Sometimes when we're looking at, it starts with admissions with us. We're looking at admissions for review. We might notice that it was the first drug to go to and that there were no other drugs that were tried prior to that. We might make a suggestion to see if that might be possible for them to try that with that resident. We have weekly risk meeting, and one of the topics is antipsychotics, and the GDRs are reviewed, the behaviors are reviewed, past medications are reviewed. And then we look to see if this person would be appropriate for a referral for a psychiatrist visit. We have a psychiatrist that rounds monthly here in-house, and he reviews our residents and our meds. And you know, and including our quality meetings and our monthly pharmacist consultant. So it's a lot of different areas are being touched by different people to help reduce that rate. One of our best cases that I can bring to you is that we accepted a resident who had been in another long-term care facility, and this resident had been on 15 milligrams of Haldol for an extended decades, probably, because this kept him at bay, and it worked. The psychiatrist who rounds here did a review, and he slowly started titrating that down, and we're down to 5 milligrams, and we're hoping that we'll be able to remove that drug. We may need to use other drugs to help him with his issues, but the antipsychotic, we're in hopes that we'll be able to remove.
I want to share something based on that one poem, Margie. I know of one center, and that they had one pharmacy recommendation regarding a psychotropic medication, and the doctor said no, but didn't give rationale. And the center ended up getting a tag for chemical restraint. So, maybe if, again, I think that's really important, as Margie said, that one person sometimes can see it a little differently. How about others?
We were getting some really nice comments in the chat, and I want to just give a shout out to Jessica and Lori. We're looking at each person. Sometimes it's something simple as a small weighted blankets versus medication, or do they need something to do with their hands? And then Lori followed up with diversional activities, a tackle box with nuts and bolts and wrenches and music and memory and provider education and psychotropics regarding psychotropic drugs. So yeah, beautiful, and appreciating everybody's more small group activities, increase volunteer base to increase one-to-one activities. Yeah, so looking at the other side of things altogether, and that's really great insight. I think Jake, you've been patiently waiting to jump into the fray.
Well, not for too long. And I think, there, unfortunately, in our world, there aren't many fix-it pills that, will fix everything. And, there is not a single thing that an organization or a home can do to, see vast reductions. And in our experience with our team, it is legitimately a resident by resident, conversation by conversation, try by trial by trial, to figure out what is that magic mix of the environment, the medication regimen, and the backstory. It just takes all of those little bits and pieces to be able to make those movements. And it is a long process sometimes. It's not something that you're going to turn around in a week. It's not something you're going to turn around in a month. If you're lucky, maybe for one resident, you're able to do it in a month. But to make, whole scale changes in that system or that process, it is a dedicated commitment from an organization, a provider group, families. It takes them all.
Amanda, if I can jump in for one sec, we have a special guest on. Joan Devine is here. And if those of you don't know, Joan Devine is a longtime culture change expert, and she was the education director at the Pioneer Network forever, and lots of other things. And so I'm just going to ask Joan, can you just say hello, and got a pearl of wisdom there that you can offer as we're kind of chatting?
Oh, hello, Margie. It's so good to see you, Margie. She was on the
Hey, good
board
to see you.
of Pioneer with us, and it's so good to see
Oh my
everybody,
gosh.
and Amanda. And thank you for inviting me to join you from Missouri. You're doing incredible work here. This is so gratifying to see all that you're doing. It's been fascinating listening to your presentation, Margie. I think it's so much. I mean, you looked at a document from 2002, and it could have been written today. I think the sad thing about that is it's from 2002, and we're still not there. The good news is I think there's a resurgence. I think there is a new interest. There is a new commitment to move forward, and that's where it starts with that. So it's so great to see all you and the wonderful work you're doing in Maine, and I hope to be able to help and support in any way that I can.
Oh, mwah, so good to see you.
Could I add something? I'm Kate from Glenridge in Augusta.
Sure.
So, yeah, so our facility has 125 beds, and we're all moderate to severe dementia. And we were quite a bit over the state average and state and national average for our antipsychotic usage. And we developed a performance improvement team with our medical director, Joanne Wang. And we meet every month, and we have a really high level of participation with all of our floor staff. And she usually does some education with the staff, because a lot of times there are a lot of misnomers about what psychotropic drugs can do as opposed to what we think they can do. And after she does that, we review every resident in the building that is on an antipsychotic, talk about whether or not they are appropriate to try a dose reduction. And then after we go through everybody, we bring up, we have an open forum to talk about any of our particular residents that we're struggling with, to get input from other members of our team. And we saw a very significant drop in the usage of antipsychotics in our building. And we have really been either under the state and national averages or right at, but we've worked really, really hard with our team. And I think, we've gotten, because we have such a large building with so many residents, it can be overwhelming sometimes with some of the behaviors that we have, and some of our newer staff that aren't aware of the antipsychotics are, wanting you to medicate. So it's really been good to get input from them and also be able to educate them so that we're all on the same page and wanting the best outcome for the residents.
Thank you. Hey, Dr. Weary, while you're with us, you got a minute to offer up a pearl?
I don't know about a pearl, but I want to commend everybody who is doing the thing you need to do, right? Which is to be systematic, to engage the whole team, to do it every month, to know, as Jake says, it's going to take a long time. And, it's the old, every journey starts with a one step. I think that's really my pearl, is commend yourself at every turn for every small success. There's a tipping point for success where, you decide to do it, and then you put your process in place. You start going on it. It's a little frustrating, and then you get not only that resident whose dose is reduced, but who wakes up. And I'll tell you, you only have to see one resident come out from under the cloud of antipsychotics to be inspired to want to keep going. And you make sure everybody sees it, you make sure everybody knows it, and then you just keep posting it. This month we've reduced by one resident, next month too, and it just keeps going like that. So anyway, thanks for the shout out, Margie, and hey, Joan.
Great.
Man, talk about a powerhouse of people on this call today, guys. We got some incredible, work going on in homes, and we got some incredible national recognized people who can help guide us through this. So I can't thank everyone enough. And it's exciting to see so many people really committed to this. Any other discussion before we let Amanda kind of close us out? Again, I just want to say, anyone who wants to be part of the Toolkit work group, you can email me, you can email Odes. I'll put my email in again so that you can, really would love to have as many people, and I know that Dr. Weary and Margie and Brenda and everyone is willing to help out with this project too. So the more minds hearing all this stuff, it's just great. So thank you.
All I want to say is press on. Just keep going. Press on.
I have one of my most favorite saying. It's in right behind me on my bookshelf. You can't see it. It's a little small little cube, and it's Winston Churchill, and it says, "When you're going through hell, just keep going."
I like that.
Yeah.
That was COVID, right, Mo?
Yeah, that was.
It really hit home in COVID.
Yes.
While we're wrapping up, I'm just going to share the QR code. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. You all had some really wonderful input. We're grateful for everybody's willingness to share. If you wouldn't mind completing this brief survey to help us gauge what's going well and what we could improve, that would be great. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Hey,
You'll see
Amanda?
a QR. Oh, go ahead.
For some of us who are maybe not as expert with technology, how do I access this
The link
QR
is in
code?
the chat. I was just going to get to that, Mo.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you so
Sorry.
much. I was just going to get to that. Yep. So you'll see the QR code on your screen if you want to use your phone to access that, or if you prefer a link, we've dropped that into the chat box. After this call, if you have any questions related to QueST, please send them to odes.nifquality@maine.gov, and I'll drop that in the chat in just 1 second. Today's recording and the slides will be posted on the Rate Reform website. That was in the chat earlier, and I'll put that up again while we're waiting for you all to finish with the QR code. It's also on the SharePoint. We're going to put it in the Rate Reform website and on the SharePoint site by Monday at the latest, possibly sooner. If you haven't accessed the SharePoint site yet, we encourage you to try to do so. It houses all of the previous call recordings, slides, a lot of other resources that we've previously shared, also the chat log and attendance list for each of the QueST calls if you're looking for that. As always, we will also send out the slides, speaker bios, and any other relevant materials via the email to all QueST members. So if you're not getting those emails, please, again, shout out to that inbox, and we'll make sure that you get added.